Get ready to stir it up.
With real conversations, let's have real conversations.
Get ready to stir it up.
Life events and everything in between, let's go.
Get ready to stir it up.
No capping, Ikea's got you covered right up.
Get ready to stir it up. Stir it up.
Come on.
Get ready to stir it up.
Welcome to Stir It Up. Today I have Oreva Ogene Joel. He's a minister of the gospel and a public management consultant. And we're going to be talking about if marriage is important for men, or why marriage is important for men. And he's very well placed to have this conversation because he's someone I've known for several years, 20-something years now.
Yeah.
2001-ish.
One, right.
Yes. And there is such admiration for him as a person, as a man of God, but even more importantly, as a husband. So we're going to dig into this conversation, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, great to be here. And like I was said to you, this program and set is set to go places.
Thank you.
I think I'll keep the rest of that conversation
For
still
later.
private.
Yes,
But
thank you.
we've talked a lot about it. But I want to say, great work you're doing. And it's great to be with you today to look into a few issues of the most intricate, I will call it,
Yeah.
issue that humans, more or less have to face at one point or the other in life.
Yeah.
Marriage.
Yes.
Marriage, yeah.
So I'll kick it off by reading something I read from a paper, right? So it's the Harvard Medical School review that they do. So it says research by the Harvard Medical School showed that marriage is associated with 46% lower risk of dying early for men compared to those who are single, divorced, or widowed. So 46% of men are likely not to die early if they are in a committed relationship. Now, as I read this excerpt, I thought to myself, interesting. Because there's so many men today who say they don't want to get married or they want to stay single. And so this conversation is us diving in a little bit into that. So I'll start off with, do you think marriage is important generally?
Yeah, I would say very, very important. There are, as of today's estimate by the United Nations, we have close to 8.2 billion people on the face of the earth, and close to, you have about 7,000 distinct ethnic groups, which, are up on the face of the earth. And these people come with their own complexities, on a very broad scale. To maintain order, some form of social order, we need the institution of marriage. We also need, as much as we need the institution of government, we also need, stable homes to ensure that there is some form of cultural continuity, normalcy, balance, as you would say, environments, the proper environments to bring up children, and then, of course, to also more or less put in place the guidelines for, male-female relationships, which, of course, could run very wild if they are not...
There are no guardrails.
If they're not, if there are no guardrails, as you say. So marriage on its own, I would say fundamentally, it's a progression, it's a step, from the youth stage of life, so to say, to the point where an individual gets to become more or less a well bred and well-balanced member of society to be able to contribute their quota, to what normal life should be in communities and in countries.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So when you talk about, I want to double click a bit on how the institution supports raising family structures.
Okay.
In what ways do you think having that collaboration between a couple, how does that help with raising families?
Well, there are what you would call state laws or national laws or country laws that dictate to a very large extent the responsibilities
Yes.
of, both, members of the family, or those, the male and the female, the husband and the wife, as the case may be, the kind of roles we're expected to play. And then, of course, we also have religious inclinations,
Yeah.
which may or may not, be important to the couple.
Yeah.
If it is, then of course they are also answerable to certain laws and regulations within that spiritual order.
True.
And then, of course, the very important aspect of it is the traditional order.
Okay.
Because marriage, being a cultural institution, is born out of, our traditional ethos. We come out of it, from our backgrounds. So even when there is a mix, there are still requirements.
True.
So all these put, certain guidelines in place, which help, the bringing up of the children, catering for family, and for the different roles which the husbands or the wives, for that matter, play in
Within
the
the family
relationship.
structure.
So there are prescriptions. There are prescriptions, right from national laws, community laws, cultural laws, traditional laws, then of course spiritual laws. All these, are pointers to how, marriages should be more or less, put in place.
So I'll take the last one you talked, which was spiritual laws. Mm-hmm. And I think it might be worthwhile asking you about, what does the Bible say about marriage and why it's important?
Well, I believe you're...
And that's just because the last one you said.
Yeah, I believe you're asking me that question, basically because I'm a minister of the gospel, yes. Of course. I would also not want to, by any means, underplay what other faiths say. Okay. About marriage, and because they are all equally important. Okay. You see, so whatever spiritual persuasions that the couple belong to, there are, still, requirements. But let's talk about that which we are well versed about. When it comes to the Christian religion, and the Christian religion subscribes to the Bible. The Bible consists of the Old Testament and the New Testament. In the Old Testament, we see very clearly where God indicates in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, that it is not good for man to be alone.
And was this man gender specific, or it was because at that time, no, so Eve had not been created at the time, right? So it was a man.
Yes, it was a man, yes. As it were, and then God said it is not good for man to be alone. But I can understand what you have on your mind at this point, It's the same thing to say it's also good for a woman not to be alone. Yes. You understand? So it's very symbiotic. God bringing the woman into the man's life, it's as good as bringing the man into the woman's life. Yeah. So what God created at the beginning in Genesis chapter 2 is a very symbiotic relationship, and I believe to a very large extent in the eyes of God equal, and if you see further down, like in Genesis chapter 24, this, what I'm about to mention now can become, a bit contentious at some point.
But that's okay.
You see, if you look at Genesis chapter 24, it's a story about Abraham seeking a wife for his son Isaac.
Yeah.
And he sends his servant out. Okay? Okay, long story. I mean, it's a very long chapter, about 67 verses, but it's a good read anytime for anybody preparing for marriage. When it gets to verse 14, the servant of Abraham prays a prayer. He actually places a fleece before God and asks God to confirm the lady he's ordained for his master's son.
Yeah.
You know, and he says, oh, if I get there and I ask the woman to give me water, and she says, not only for you, but also for your camels.
Then that's the person.
Yes, then this is the woman you have ordained. Okay? So if you stretch it, you look at the kind of input God has in marriage, you will see that it's my belief and my understanding that God has a choice in the matter.
He certainly does.
He has a role to play in the matter.
Yes.
Okay? So as much as is possible, you know, those intending to go into marriage should also seek, you know, spiritual opinion, you know, about what their God says.
Yes.
Putting it simply.
Yes.
All right? And further, if you asking what the Bible says about marriage, I know there are quite some contentious issues, you know, that come up, you know, time and time again. But the Bible is so balanced in the approach to marriage. For example, if you look at 1 Peter chapter 3, there Peter was talking to the male folk and saying to them, take care of your wives, love your wives, because they are the weaker sex. You see, so in the whole concept of marriage in the Bible, yeah, I mean, there are lots and lots of scriptures that, you know, enjoin or rather encourage submission on the part of the woman, love on the part of the man. But even at that, you can still see that the submission and love flows both ways.
Yes.
The
Yes.
man can, the
Also
man should
submits
also
in
submit to
certain
the
ways.
yes, and
Yes.
then the woman to the man to the woman. So love and submission, you know, flows both ways, you know, and it's a good play, you know, when the scripture now puts all that before us. So that's just a few of what the Bible says about, you know, how to put marriage in place.
So I want to stay a little bit on the fact that God has a say in the matter.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a very quick thought that I had with, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine about how in most parts of my life, I let God in.
Okay.
Well, almost every part. Which is work, raising my children. If I wanted to do a project, I pray about stir it up and so on. But one of the things that I noticed was I asked myself, do I ask God into my relationships the way I should ask God into my relationships? And I realized that I didn't as much. And this is a bit of a vulnerable moment where I acknowledge that I think that when it comes to relationships, we make a choice ourselves. And if we are to live in obedience to God, we want God to be part of that decision.
Yeah.
And because we've made the choice, we're like, no, I'm just going to take it to God for God to bless it for me, right?
Yeah.
Rather than asking him, is this the right person for me, given my makeup, right? And I feel like there are times when I haven't let God into that because I feel like I've made a choice. I just need him to rubber stamp it and we keep rolling.
Yeah.
And it's how do you pause and now say, I'm under full submission and I want you to help me make the right choices that are good for me. So when you talk about God has a say in who you end up with or that whole marriage covenant, it's something that I definitely identify with because a lot of the time we do not let God into that space.
Yeah.
I'm making you smile.
You know, I'll tell you, I hope this does not turn out into a preaching session because that's not what I want it to be.
Yes.
However, King David says in Psalm 23 verse 1, that the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want.
Yeah.
So what that means, in essence, is that we should allow God, to lead us into whatever we want to do, or He has a plan for our lives. Okay? If you look at the current day Israel, they did not arrive at that destination, by choice. God took Abraham from the land of Persia, the current day Iran, and led him close to 2,500 kilometers through the desert, through the Persian desert, into the Arabian desert, and pointed out a place for him and said, I've given you this land to you and your descendants. That is what, Bible history says to us.
Yeah.
And when King David says, the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want, what that means invariably is that God has the first say in everything.
Everything. He should.
He has the first say in everything. Mm-hmm. So, and what it means is that at any point in time that we want to take crucial decisions in life, we should, do what the Bible considers the right thing, which is to go to God in prayer and ask for His will.
Not rubber stamping.
Not rubber stamping.
But God also says to us that whatever you ask for in my name, I'll give to you. So doesn't the rubber stamp come there?
And Jesus said, if my word abide in you and you abide in me, you will ask whatsoever you will, and you will get it. What does that mean? It means that
it's based on His word and based on
that abides in you. So you're not going to ask outside the precincts
Principle.
of His will.
Thank you.
That's why the Bible also says that for as many as are led by the Spirit, they are the sons of God. A very good example is Jesus getting baptized in River Jordan. And after that, the scripture says he is driven or led into the wilderness by the Holy Spirit to be tempted of the devil. So his post-Jordan experience was basically within the context of what God had ordained for him. Okay? So, and the strength to go through that trial came out of the fact that the Spirit of God was present with him there.
Yeah.
So, in the journey of life, we need the Holy Ghost. So that's why Jesus said, it's good for you that I go away, so that the Comforter can come. And when he comes, he will lead you, he will teach you, he will help you, he will guide you, and bring you into all that I have, spoken or written, concerning you. Okay, let me add one more thing. Jesus once said, I have come, O God, as it is written of me in the volume of thy books, to do thy will, O God. So, what does that mean? It means that Jesus specifically could do nothing except what he saw his Father do. And he stated that very clearly in John chapter 5. I can do nothing except what I see my Father do. So from the Christian perspective, when it comes to the issues of either choosing, that word, I get frightened. I get scared of hearing that word, choose, select. It means sometimes people think they have the power to take and test and discard and then, take this to themselves. There's nothing like that. When it comes to the point where, we believe by the leading of God that it's time for matrimony, we begin to get, at that time it's good to ask the Father to say, Lord, what will you have me to do? Which was the exact thing Paul did when he was Saul and fell from his horse in the book of Acts. And while he was on the ground,
so that's where the Damascene conversion happened.
Good. Yep. And Jesus asked him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? His first response is, Lord, what will you have me to do? So putting it compositely, it's all about putting the whole issues of marriage in the hands of the Almighty God. Let him be the one to choose. Let him be the one to ordain. Let him be the one, to direct, because only God knows the future. None of us has the ability, to conjure or visualize, even contemplate what the future will be like. But the Almighty God is the only one that has that power. So if you have that inclination, then of course you should submit to it.
Okay. So I've often heard, so coming back to our men and the choice to be in a committed relationship. Okay. I've often heard men say, well, Jesus never got married. So why should I get married?
I did Jesus.
That's enough of an answer. We can move on.
You can move on. They are not Christ.
Let's move on.
Jesus had a very peculiar assignment.
Got it.
Which was to come and die for mankind, as we believe, as Christians. Okay? Yeah. And as some other faiths, dimly accept. Yeah. So there's no comparison.
There's
no comparison. So Jesus not getting married is not.
It's neither here nor there.
Neither here nor there. However, there are still men who made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of God. There are people who have decided that, look, you know what? I want to remain unmarried so that I can focus.
And that's different.
Yes, on one particular thing or the other. So if anybody is giving you an example that Jesus did not marry, so that's why he was successful, that is neither here, nor
But
there.
Jesus didn't have sex either. So why are you not married and you're having sex?
Well, that is
my count.
side.
That's my count.
That's the other side of it.
Yeah.
Okay, because one of the reasons why marriage is put in place is to give the male and the female an opportunity to express themselves to each other, within lawful bounds.
Yes.
Which you will not find outside of marriage.
Got it.
So that is one part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how does a marriage influence a man's life?
Well, that's a very, very big question. And
so maybe we can look at it professionally, spiritually, financially to a certain extent, and just even socially.
Yeah. So it depends on the kind of marriage.
Okay.
On the one hand, it depends on the kind of marriage. And stretching it further, I would say it takes more than marriage to affect or influence a man professionally, spiritually, and in all other realms. Yeah. And we'll talk about a few things, as we go on. If a man doesn't have plans for himself, he can be married to the best woman on earth. He will still be a low grader. So it's not like a good marriage, maybe putting it, both ways, being married to a good man or being married to a good woman, is an antidote for failure or immediately it makes you successful. No, that is not what it will do for you. The human being still has the personal responsibility to gather themselves together and to pursue the ideals of life.
So let me challenge that thought a little bit. I definitely agree that as a man or as a human, you need to have your own goals and your own thoughts and your own values and all of that, right? And that's the foundation of who you are as a person.
Right.
But in any partnership, we both influence each other.
That's true.
And we both have a positive or a negative impact on the other.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
And so when I think about, as a woman, how does a good partner or a good partner influence me?
Okay.
And let's just even say socially.
Right.
I think that there is a certain kind of security that comes with having a partner or having your person.
You're right.
When I think about it financially, I think about the fact that two incomes are better than one,
Certainly.
right? Or, for example, the fact that if I'm bad with money,
Yeah.
my partner can be a check or a balance on me, right? So when I think about men, I'm just trying to work out that, and I agree with you, it depends on the kind of marriage, because some marriages are very dictatorial and some marriages are not a partnership. But let's take that in the right construct of a marriage, where the two are operating as partners, and they are both under some kind of submission to God.
Yeah. And to each other.
And to each other. More importantly, to each other, right?
Right.
Not more important, but importantly to each other.
Yeah.
To each other. Where are the points of influence?
Yeah, I mean, it's not difficult to believe or to understand that a good marriage would assist, either of the couple, to accelerate in their, aspirations, in their ideals, whether professionally, or otherwise. Even health-wise, there's something about coming to a loving home. There's something great about, coming to an understanding partner. As when we even look at some of the lifestyle diseases today, a lot of them are aggravated by stress. So if a man or a woman if they have a stressful environment outside, either at work or external relationships, the home should be a cocoon of peace, so to say.
Yes.
I mean, the home should be a place where either of them can come in and under certain levels of interaction and guidance, they should be able to reduce the stress of what the outside world is presenting to them. So to a very, very large extent, a sound marriage helps not just the man, but also the woman to do very well, in whatever they lay their hands to. I mean, there are couples who, I've seen couples who sometimes take leave from work for a period of time, to pay attention to their spouse's own jobs and professions. Maybe their spouses have some, very important projects that they have to see through. They put aside what they do for themselves, and they see how to help the other to establish and run, seamlessly, so to say. So definitely the influence can be, very, very great. When it comes to spiritual things, for example, many a time we know that the women, sometimes are more or less like leaders in prayer, in homes and all that. That in itself could also be an encouragement to a man. I remember a few years ago, a gentleman got up, in one of the churches and gave a testimony, and he said, "Look, I will tell you the truth. I don't have time to pray the way I want to pray. But you see,
I have a prayer warrior.
I have a prayer warrior. My wife prays for me, And that testimony was very, of course, I know it must have encouraged quite a couple of marriages that day to know that, yes, the mothers of the home or the wives of the home can have the backs, of their spouses, of their husbands. You see, so to a very large extent, that of course is not to say that the men should not pray, because what we find today is that the women are even as busy as the men, in most cases. So both should uphold each other in prayer, spiritually.
Okay. Would you say a marriage is a place of growth? And how do each of the people in the relationship grow?
It depends on growth in which aspect of life you're talking about. There's growth in your relationship with God. There's growth in your career. There's growth in your even in your personal awareness, you discover yourself, or you discover yourselves, as it were, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so progressive that growth is just a progressive thing that, if you look back a few years, and you compare it to where you are today, you know that the difference is huge, quite huge.
Yes.
So talking about growth, the fact is, there is nothing as helpful, as comforting, as a spouse, a husband or a wife, who knows your position, who understands your aspirations, and is there with you to build it through. You see, so growth is not something you can even do as a married person on the blind side of your spouse.
Yeah.
It becomes a joint, more or less like a joint task.
Yeah, because you learn how to resolve conflicts together. So I understand that maybe if there's a conflict situation, you don't want to talk, you want to take some time off. Or I learned that if there's a conflict, you want to deal with it now. So we both need to meet each other halfway. So that's growth, right?
The men usually want to be quiet.
That's what I'm saying, right? We must talk about it now,
Talk about
not
it
tomorrow,
now, not tomorrow.
not next week, right? And so even as a couple who have a singular purpose,
Yeah.
you then need to balance out and say, okay, should I give a bit of space, or should I not?
Okay.
Or okay, no, you know what? He'll come back and talk about
Okay.
it, right?
Okay.
So once you begin to know the person,
Understand the person.
there's some growth there.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you're talking about emotional intelligence here, and of course, couples definitely should help one another, to better adjust.
Yeah.
And become, better suited, not just for one another, but for larger society.
Absolutely.
You see,
Your husband doesn't dress well, you tell him, Charlie, you can't be going
you
out
can't-
like this.
that's
Or your
it.
wife doesn't dress well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So it's really, I mean, it's more or less like having a tutor, a coach for free.
Yeah.
Your spouse can become your coach for free.
Yeah.
Or your coach or your mentor for free, so to say.
Understood.
Your coach indoors, your mentor indoors, who does not charge you anything for letting you know, how to do things better. Yeah, so definitely it comes, with, added advantage, so to say, when, a couple can relate on that plane. Yeah.
Let's go into the next section where we're talking about the things that are causing the breakdown of marriages today.
I'll allow you to finish the question.
So we've established that marriage is of God. We've established that it's important to a certain extent, right? And it helps with social order. It helps with, families. It helps global. Sorry?
It helps provide an environment.
The right environment for raising a family, right? But we are finding that a lot of people have their marriages breaking down, right? And there are a whole bunch of reasons why people's marriages fall apart. I have a fundamental view, but I don't want to fall into that too much. I think that it's just that we're not choosing right, or we are not paired with the people that God has chosen for us to a certain extent. So that's one view I have, right? But outside of that view, when I think about the little things that are causing marriages to break down today, I want us to take a couple of them and talk about them.
Okay.
So maybe I'll give one, and I'll give a few, and then we talk about them. So one of them is, for example, is just financial issues.
Okay.
So we're finding out that financial issues are a big stress point in a lot of relationships. What are your thoughts, and what are some of the things that we can do to mitigate the impact of financial issues in a relationship?
Okay. Before I talk about about financial issues,
Yeah.
let me put this.
Please.
Let me put this in context.
Please do.
The reasons why marriages succeed or fail. I want to safely assume that what is known to us is still a fragment of what the real issues are.
I agree.
And secondly, I want to say, if you see a marriage succeeding, don't clap for the people. If you see a marriage fail, don't be disappointed in the people.
Yes.
Because there are many, many, many more issues than meet the eye.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Even when God chooses for you,
There are strongholds in your family. There are cycles. There's so much that goes on, even spiritually, that you're avoiding that.
I'm avoiding all that. I can tell you very, 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 very.
But I
plainly.
keep dragging you back
Yeah.
into the religious bit.
Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Even in the scriptures, in the Bible, God chose Rebekah for Isaac,
Yes.
but Rebekah
Yeah.
colluded with her son Jacob to deceive the father.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So if you want to look at this, on how will I put it now, on a plain basis, you will say, but why would a woman that God chose do this kind of thing? So all these are in the realms of providence. We have more questions than answers. So Chinua Achebe, the writer, once said something. He said, if spirits help you to break your palm kernel at night, don't come out and boast in the daytime that you are doing better than those whose palm kernels
Have not been
broken. Okay? Because in the real sense of it, the things that make marriages to succeed or to fail, there is more to it than meets the human eye.
I agree with you.
But of course, as human beings, we should do our part. Now, you mentioned something about finances.
So let's stay on that. Let's hold off going to
Okay.
finances.
Okay.
Let's stay a little bit on the things that don't meet, the things that we don't see.
Yeah.
Before we go into this, because I kind of see it was part of the conversation, but you brought it into a part of it. So let's have that conversation now.
Yeah. So you meet a couple, excited about each other. They love each other. Everything is on point. And then it does not work out. And then you begin to try to think through
Make
the
sense
whole
out
thing.
of it.
It makes absolutely no sense.
Yes.
Please, let me dash into the aspect of finance now.
Okay.
There are extremely poor people who are very happy in their marriages.
Oh, yes.
So it doesn't necessarily have to do much with, whether there is money or good management of money or bad management of money. All kinds of things can happen in the financial realm, but I would say that on its own, in some homes could be a factor. In some others might not even be noticeable.
It would be a non-starter.
Because, like I said, there are some extremely poor families that are very happy. You understand?
Yeah.
It does not mean they don't want their situations to change, but
They're content.
they are content.
And the whatever is happening within that unit, they understand that it's them against the world. Like there's a unit, there's unity.
And some of them don't even have the kind of spiritual inclinations we have.
Yes.
They are not of similar persuasions.
Yes.
You see?
Yeah.
So there is more to this. And I really, really think that this is something which should come up when there is marriage counseling, whether it's in a mosque, if it's in a Buddha temple, a Hindu temple, a Christian church, whatever organizations the people subscribe to, there are certain issues that should be placed before them.
Like?
You see, a marriage is a social contract. And as a social contract, it falls under the purview of legally constituted ventures. Okay, so let me put on the cape of a public management consultant here. The truth is, with all the money in the world, if you undertake any venture, either in the public management space, either as an NGO,
corporate,
or even a government agency for that matter, and you don't have a proper strategy in place, it does not matter how much money you carried to start, you will fail.
So, and part of that strategy is having a united purpose, it's having a plan. But beyond those things, what else is in that strategy? As a couple.
You see, as a couple, your purpose. You see, one of the things that hold marriages together, in my estimation, is a joint vision, joint mission,
okay,
joint purpose, joint ethos, okay, which basically is about how you want to present yourselves, in a moralistic sense.
Got it. So what are your values?
Your values.
Yeah.
Your values play into your ethos.
Yeah.
Very significantly.
Yeah.
Okay? So, as much as is possible, it is, if anybody comes up today to say, with the benefit of hindsight, I want to, go into marriage, with, this or with that, I think one of the things I would want to share with them will be what I would call a marriage development template. Okay? So, both of the pair should sit down together and say, what will be our goals for the next 5 years? What will be our goals for the next 10 years? Okay? And then, of course, what will our objectives be? That is, our objectives are the means by which we carry out those goals. Okay? And then they should be able to do, a forecast of what their activities will be. These, of course, feed into the previous question you asked me. How does a marriage help a man professionally, spiritually, physically? So a couple are coming together today, and as they come together, one of the things which they should be thinking about, both of them are coming together, they're good, they're holding O-level certificates, let's just put it at that, So they are starting out in life together. Yeah. They should be able to tell each other, so what route are we taking? Are we taking the technical route, or we want to take the academic route?
Yeah.
So if we're taking the academic route or the technical route, when is our next certification?
Yeah.
Okay? When is our next, so and so? When is our next,
what are the milestones?
What are the milestones? That's it.
Okay.
All right? So when these things are clearly noted and written out, it becomes a document, it becomes a walking Bible of the family. Even as much as, talking about, the kind of accounts they will keep, the kind of finances they will keep, the kind of savings they will do, the kind of investments they will do, and all that. Look, no strategy is cast on iron.
You recalibrate on a need-to basis.
That is it.
Yeah.
So, but at least it gives you a
guide.
roadmap. So when a couple are more or less, dedicated to fulfilling what is in that document, chances are very, very high that they would, more or less flow into one another. And then there will be, an onward, positive progression. So I believe so much that this even helps to answer the previous question. Marriage, as it were, yes, we believe that God will choose for us. We believe, but we have our part
Even
to
after
play.
the choice is made,
Right.
there's so much you need to do to sustain it.
To sustain it, sustainability.
Yeah.
Like in every strategy, you have what is called a sustainability plan. So even the marriage, you have a sustainability plan. No, but that's the truth.
What does a sustainability plan in a marriage look like for you?
Well, if you ask me, I would say the sustainability plan, will be quite a wide-ranging aspect, which would look at the finances, which will look at how to keep the flame alive. Okay? Part of your sustainability plan can be your vacations,
To
doing
reset, doing things together.
Yeah, doing things together, things that, can leave good memories. I can see wonderful photographs you have here. These kind of things are things which children remember.
Yeah.
That just keep them, in focus.
Yeah.
And it keeps them grounded. But
Absolutely.
Better so.
Yeah.
It keeps them grounded.
Yeah.
So there are ways to make a marriage sustainable. Like I said, the vacations are part of it. In this part of the world, it takes a bit to be able to put all that together. But sometimes, no matter how small it is, even if it is inner city vacations, which the family can afford, it's wonderful. Like I always say to my wife, I say, look, anytime I see sardine and bread, I remember my mother. You understand?
Yeah.
Because I remember one early morning, I must have been about 4 years old or so. We had the trip, there was war in that part of the country at that time. And then it was about an hour or so trip. And then we arrived at the destination, in a town called Warri. And then, I was so hungry, and she bought this bread and sardine for me.
And it's nostalgic for you. And there's a huge emotional tie to that moment.
That's it.
Yeah.
I said it to her yesterday.
Yeah.
I said, so if I see sardine and bread, it evokes something in me. I remember my mom.
Yeah.
So what is I'm trying to say? It's like, there are little things that can be done.
The investments you make into the relationship so that the bank is not empty.
That is it. Of your spouse, of your children.
Yeah.
There must be something. There just must be something, that, they can look back to, they can, and for that reason, can stay loyal
to that unit.
That is it.
Okay. So you said something about counseling. So I want to go back to it in terms of the reasons why marriages are breaking down. You talked about counseling is very important.
Yeah.
I said something a couple of months ago about how counseling a lot of the time is not very useful to sustaining a marriage.
Right.
And
when you say counseling, which are you referring to?
So
is it Christian counseling,
Christian counseling
or psychological counseling?
Christian counseling.
Okay.
Today.
Okay.
In the format in which it is.
Okay.
And the experience I've had.
Okay.
A lot of the time, it doesn't necessarily always address the things that it needs to address. There's some counseling. There's some counseling that works.
Okay.
But generally, I find that a lot of the issues that need to be dealt with at that stage of understanding the couple, even deciding whether you are well suited for each other, understanding the value systems that you're going into, that you have, understanding, basically if you're equally yoked, right, do not necessarily exist in Christian counseling the way they should.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, if there are 2 or 3 things that you think need to be part of the fundamentals of how we counsel, right, what would they be? Because when I think back, there is so much honesty that we need in counseling. So people think that they're not going on a joyride, because marriage is not a joyride.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
There's a lot of flowery stuff and very surface level conversations that I had. It's almost like a lot of people are walked to the altar, and it's almost like they're being walked lambs to the slaughter. Because it's like the expectation.
That's a heavy word to use.
It is a heavy word to use, but the truth is that the expectation is not the reality of what a marriage is. A marriage is messy.
Yeah.
A marriage is difficult. It's understanding 2 people who are from very different backgrounds coming together, different values. There's so much trauma that you don't even see that your partner has.
That's true.
And you are now discovering, and sometimes you can be fighting with your partner on the surface of it. And you think you are fighting about the fact that the table is dirty, but you're actually fighting about control.
Something else.
You're actually fighting about him feeling that you don't value him, but it's not about the dirty table. You know what I mean?
Of course, it's always secondary.
It's always secondary.
Always secondary, yeah.
Right? So sometimes, and I absolutely love what you said at the beginning when you said, when you see somebody succeeding, don't clap. When you see somebody failing, don't boo them. Because it's a daily struggle to keep a couple together. So I just want to start from the counseling bit in terms of just thoughts. And your thoughts will not be comprehensive, right? Because this is just a short conversation we are having. But what do you think we could be doing differently from a counseling perspective?
Okay. Like I said previously, I believe so much that counseling for intending couples or married couples for that matter, because counseling really should never stop.
It shouldn't.
I mean, it's a lifelong process. You need a coach. You need mentors, as it were. To look up to inspire you, to help you look at some difficult issues and all that. But the first line approach I would suggest is that there should be first spiritual counseling based on whatever persuasions they belong to. The first, of course, is spiritual counseling.
Okay.
The second, of course, would be financial counseling. Maybe traditional counseling should come before financial. And when I say traditional, I mean, you see, sometimes we overlook the impact of what our cultures and environments do to
a relationship.
To our relationships and our homes.
Yes.
You see people behaving in certain patterns, and then you begin to wonder, but why is it that men from this ethnic group,
behave this way?
They behave this way? Why is it that women from this ethnic group, they behave this way? And when you watch, true to type, it's like people are playing out a script that they have no power to change.
Yes.
Okay? As it has been in the days of the parents, that is how it is today.
Okay.
But, fact of the matter is that there just could be a better way of appraising or understanding the situation. Okay? If in prehistoric times, this is how our ancestors behaved, there was a reason why they behaved like that.
Way.
If the men were always domineering, they would not take advice from their spouses or this or that. Maybe they were fighting wars. And then it required a man to be of that disposition.
Understood.
But are you still fighting wars today? No. So drop that thing.
The context that resulted in a certain behavior.
Yes.
Needs
it's no longer there.
Needs to evolve,
yes,
right?
Needs to evolve.
Because it's no longer there. Yeah.
Yes. So you see, to a very large extent, we also need that traditional counseling to know why. I mean, we should also be able to ask our people, okay, I've come to marry your daughter. but I know that women from your area behave like this. Uncle, tell me why. Because I will not want to see that kind of thing in my home.
Yeah.
Okay? Or I've come to marry your son. Or I'm getting your son has come to marry me. And I observe that men from this area, they are perpetual drunks. Tell me, what can I do so that my husband will not fall into that kind of thing as time goes on? I'm just giving some, very
Small
simple.
example.
But I mean, there are more complex issues. So there should be what you call traditional counseling. There should be spiritual counseling, that is to whatever persuasions. Then of course financial counseling. Financial counseling, like an uncle of mine used to tell me, he said, if you receive your salary and you put it in your back pocket, by the time
you get home, it's all flown away.
You get home, it's all gone. You understand? And that uncle of mine told me, he said, look, you don't save to build a house.
You just start building.
He said, you just start building.
Yeah, that's
true. He told me, he said, building is a hobby.
Yeah.
He said, so don't let anybody tell you you must be a multi-billionaire before you build.
Yeah.
So that was great financial counsel I had.
Yeah.
Spoke to my wife and I before we got married. So what I'm trying to say is that there are certain levels of instructions and advice we should get, before we get committed into the whole thing. Yeah. All this should not be left in the hands of
the church.
Or
the
religious groups. Okay? Because in most instances, these people may not be versed, experienced, tutored, or have the understanding of how to handle intricate issues. Then, of course, you have the psychological counseling. The psychological counseling is also crucial because there, of course, you are meeting a professional, who has the understanding of, quite
your
a couple
personalities.
of these, of your personalities and all that. Because, of course, I mean, let's look at it. You get into marriage and there are 4 different temperament types, like all right? Yes. There are 4 different temperament types. You should know your spouse's temperament type. Yes, whether it's sanguine, if you can tolerate the sanguine, who is, never serious about, anything. They laugh and joke and make fun about. If you know you can't take that, then you know where you stand. You phlegmatic or you're choleric, you can easily fly off the handle, and all that. Or melancholic. All right?
Who is very introspective.
Very introspective. Yeah. So these are things which I'm sure by the time you go for psychological counseling, just like, a specialist will see through, the different behavior types and be able to tell you that, hey, yes, you guys can make it or you cannot make it, but, you need to watch out for this, you need to watch out for this.
Got it.
Okay? Will you be able to tolerate this? Because I can see that this personality, this is how he or she, approaches life.
And then you make that decision there. So
there are no regrets later when the person begins to act up in those things. Then, of course, the medical counseling, which is,
important, whether you're sickling or not, and so on. Okay.
And not just sickling tests and all that. Yeah. There are psychiatric tests.
Okay.
There are psychiatric tests.
Okay. I would have put that under the psychology bit, but I get you.
The psychologists, will not delve deep into, things of psychiatry ordinarily.
Yes, you're right.
But please, the medical counseling, if you want to be open to each other, you run full tests before marriage, and then periodically you will agree 6 months or yearly. You do your medicals, not because...
but to stay on top of things.
To stay on top of things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are, what do you call them now? There are pathogens, which could lead to more difficult, sometimes even chronic illnesses that can be easily handled, when they are noticed at first. Okay. Mental instability and the sorts, some of them are more or less the absence of certain nutrients in the body. So You go for those tests. You do full, what do you call it? Full mineral, vitamin tests and all that, so that you know exactly where you stand. So if you're deficient in one thing, you up it up. Because I will tell you this, some of the things that rear their heads, for example, people flaring up in marriage, impatience, irritability, is as a result of the absence of certain minerals in the body. Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
You know. So if the couple care and they go for, you know, an all-encompassing test of this nature, then they are better prepared to face life.
And maybe even just hormones, right? Because if you have thyroid issues, you're likely to be predisposed to certain things.
That's
so
true.
Understanding that,
and even hormones. Not that you mentioned hormones. There are some men who can keep it down.
Okay.
It's just rioting hormones.
Yeah.
It's a medical condition.
Yeah. So we've gone into quite a few things.
Yeah.
Back to the subject of marriages breaking down.
Okay.
So, in your work as a man of God, I am sure you encounter many families that require your support in navigating their relationships, right? What are some of the conversations around the things that cause the breakdown? So we've talked about quite a few. So we've talked about the financial bit, we've talked about the counseling, we've talked a little bit about just even the medicals, right? Just in terms of the fact that sometimes it's a health reason that causes us to, the things that, the little foxes.
Yeah.
Those are some of the little foxes.
Yeah.
And remember, sometimes there's always a combination of things. It's not just one thing,
That's true.
right?
That's true.
I mean, I always say that when you are young and innocent, you say that, oh, if my husband cheats on me, I will leave immediately.
Yeah.
And then you get into a marriage and he's cheating on you and you're still there, right? And it's the facts of life, right? Or when you're younger, you say, I want a woman who cooks and cleans and she's kind and she does this, and you find a woman and you love her and she doesn't know how to cook, and you're still there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just want to get a sense of what are some of the recurring themes for people who are struggling to keep their vows?
I doubt if you have the time to listen to it all.
Oh, I mean, I have a long list, but I just want to get a sense from you that what do you hear a lot of?
Well, the general things, of course, have to do with love, submission, infidelity, financial issues.
Okay.
Then, to a very large extent, external influences, friends, families, you know. And most of these, I believe, can or should be dealt with on the strength of, you know, the agreement which the couple would have. If they didn't have that at the beginning, they can start it any day.
Yeah.
Okay, which is to understand what their vision is, what their mission in life is, what their values are. Okay, if the couple subscribe to particular values, you will see that it will help them to sketch, you know, what their ethos. Okay, I'll give you one example of something that causes quarrels in certain jurisdictions. In a place, in some societies, there's something which is called ashwebi. Okay?
So the outfits that they wear for the...
Yeah. And then, of course, the women belong to quite a couple of groups. They belong to quite a couple of groups. And then you see a situation where the woman might be required to sometimes in a week. If there's a wedding on Thursday, she's going to do one. If there's a wedding on Saturday, she's going to do another one. Okay? And then you see this thing runs throughout
The year.
the year.
It's cash.
If it's not your elder sister, it's your younger sister, it's
your friend, it's your cousin,
it's that, and that.
Your work colleague.
That is it. So if, as a couple, you don't sit down to draw up what your moralistic foundations are before marriage, you'll get into that, and every day the husband will hear, honey,
I need some money for
I need
Ashwebi.
some money for Ashwebi. Honey, I need some money for this. You understand? And then it stretches to a point where, you know, he might not be able to
Sustain
cope,
it.
to sustain it. And then other things begin to happen. If the woman is of good means, then of course she's able to do that. But of course, it's eating into something. All right? So quite a couple of the issues, you know, really, like I say, I really don't think that, honestly speaking, that they can become issues if they are dealt with a proper understanding and agreement before time.
Okay. So, I think that we've touched on a lot of the things, right? What roles are required to get couples to work through some of these issues? And I'll tell you why I asked that question. In the case of infidelity, or a partner not caring for the family the way they need to, traditionally you are expected to, as a woman or a man, you pray about it.
Yeah.
You go to the family
Okay.
for support and conversation. And you go to a psychologist, right? But we're finding that a lot of these points of help
Yeah.
are not being as successful as they were for very older generations. I passed the comments to a friend of mine who was seeing somebody. And I said, one of the worst mistakes you can make as a woman is marrying a man who does not subject to anything, or there's no one that he listens to. We all need to be with somebody who has somebody they're afraid of.
Yeah.
Somebody who says, sit down.
That's true.
And you sit down.
Yeah. A mentor, so to say.
A mentor. Somebody who they have respect for and they will listen to. Because that is a man without walls, without guidance, right? Who is a law unto their own self, right? But more and more, we are finding that the church does play a role, but also a lot of people are also walking away from marriages in the church. Okay. Right. Where is the help going to come from? Is it in how we are choosing? Is it like a whole reset? I don't know. What do we need to do differently to reduce? So we've talked about the counseling bit, but when you are in it, what do we need to do? Where does the help come from?
Okay. First and foremost, I would want to say that we are not at a crisis point.
Okay.
All right? There is not...
We are not?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
Tell me why you say we are not.
Well, because though there are statistics that come out of, the marriage registry, talking about divorces and all, I would think that there is a lot more consensual marital relationships which are going on, on the blind side of the formalized structure,
Explain that a bit more.
Even in churches, you see a lot of people in common law marriages.
Okay.
Okay.
Which means you don't actually get married, but what does that mean?
A common law marriage, under the prescription of law, you would have dwelt together, for a period of time, during which you have played the role,
Okay.
you domesticated your roles, which have, pivoted into each other over a period of time. Those are accepted as marriages, under the law. Then, of course, there are, reconciliations going on all over. We hear the bad news more than we hear the good news.
That's very true.
You understand?
That's very true.
Now, I want to touch on something which you mentioned now, a case of, like the case of infidelity. Mm-hmm. It's so easy for people to break up or to get angry with each other when it comes to, serious in quotes. I want to use the word serious in quotes. And I will do that, guardedly. Now, Jesus said something. He said, look, if you, as a man, in your heart, you desire a woman, and you lust after her sexually, you've already committed a sin. Mm-hmm. Is that not so?
That's very true.
Good. So, it means definitely that in the eyes of God, where the sin starts is the heart.
True.
Is the mind, of the male or the female for that matter.
Okay.
And as Jesus made that admonition, he was definitely referring to both sexes.
Okay.
All right? So, if we come to think of it, as human beings, as we go day after day after day after day, there is the possibility that if we don't guard our hearts, we can find ourselves in that same situation that Jesus was talking about.
Okay.
All right? So, if the real act is enough to break a marriage, why don't you apply that to the thought?
Okay.
Good. So that's where Jesus was going when he said, in the beginning it was not so. He said, and in referring to the male and the female, he said, and they two shall become one. Mm-hmm. And what God has joined together, let no man put asunder.
Yeah.
So what Jesus expects of a couple, who maybe one has an issue or the other has another issue, is forgiveness. As difficult and as painful as it might look and as it might be, is forgiveness. Because even to start with, Jesus said, if you don't forgive men their sins, your heavenly Father will not forgive you.
That's true.
So, if we hold something against, if a spouse holds something against the other, maybe in the area of sexual infidelity,
Okay.
and on the strength of that, you refuse to forgive, then Jesus is saying to you that even your heavenly Father will not forgive you.
So I don't dispute that. But the question I ask is, does that forgiveness of a partner mean that you stay in that relationship? And I ask this very guardedly. Right? I think that there are certain things that become difficult.
That's true.
And almost
Very true.
untenable.
Very
right?
true.
So in a physically abusive relationship, for example, you might forgive your partner.
Of course.
But
it does not mean you stay.
It does not mean you stay.
Certainly.
In a relationship where there are multiple incidents of infidelity,
yeah,
my view is that it does not mean you stay.
That's true.
Right? And I get the point of understanding, but my view is that you stay if the person is willing to work through some of those issues, or even has a certain self-awareness, right, of the impact of what's happening on you, and on the relationship and on the union, and is willing, and you can see actual concrete steps to work at it. But when it becomes a take it or leave it, this is who I am kind of situation, I hear you on forgiveness, but I struggle with the thoughts that you forgive and you carry on.
Okay, I will say this. You know, what we subscribe to as Christians, one of the pivots of the faith is the need to forgive. And Jesus said, Peter asked Jesus that, how many times should I forgive?
Oh, yes.
And Jesus said, 70 times, 7 times in one day. I don't know any man or any woman that can commit 70 times 70 acts of infidelity in one day. That person is not yet born.
I hear you.
Okay, so now, putting it simply, I believe that the way to resolving, because like you rightly said, I've been opportuned to handle quite a couple of cases of this nature. The way into it, first and foremost, is forgiveness.
I don't disagree.
And then after that forgiveness, the need for the couple to work through the issue together.
But you see, I don't think that the forgiveness must necessarily come before the working through. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And it's from the thinking that when you might say, you know what, it's okay. I forgive you for something. But the question I have is, when there is no actual remorse, when there's no actual intentional action to drive any form of change. And I hear you on what you're saying, that what Jesus said. But I want to bring it into real life and us as humans and what we actually do versus what we say and what is the ideal thing to do, right? There is a point in time when you say, you know what, this is no longer tenable for me. So let's stick with the conversation around physical abuse, that you're being physically abused.
I'm very terrible.
So how do you navigate that? You forgive and do what?
That does not lead to something worse.
Yes. You forgive and do what?
Yeah, you see, again, the scriptures are quite clear on this. Apostle Paul made copious reference to this when he said that, let the unbelieving brother or sister depart.
Okay.
Okay? It says a brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases.
Okay.
Now, the reason for that is that there could be good grounds for separation.
But it doesn't mean you should separate.
No, separation means living apart.
Okay.
Very good grounds for it.
Okay.
Okay? And that was what Apostle Paul was talking about. Okay? And at such situations or at such an instance, as the case may be, it is usually an opportunity for the couple to work things out.
Agree.
All right? Without, the disturbances and the nuances of, conflict.
Yeah. And which will come as a result of cohabiting.
Yes, as a result of cohabitation. So that is actually a step in the process of resolving.
Understood.
Whatever crisis,
may exist
in the home, whether it's financial, infidelity, pardon me, families and what have you. Whatever the issues are, there is that opportunity, when the couple are apart, that they will be able to handle,
Yeah.
these things. How be it through the intervention of counselors. Because if the woman says, "Oh, this man is, susceptible to this kind of thing," or the man says, "The lady is susceptible to this kind of thing, and I'm scared for my life," then it's only wise for them to do what? To live apart for a while. And during that time, they have opportunity to assess themselves, reassess themselves, and then go through required counseling at various levels.
Yeah.
At the spiritual level, the traditional level, the medical level, the psychological level, until financial level, until they come to, a realization of what they should be doing.
Okay.
But again, like I said, it all boils down to, the couple, coming down, and like in any public organization, matrimony is a public organization. Because it is registered under law.
Yes.
It's registered under law. It's registered, as it were, without guarantee. Okay? But because that is what it is actually. That is what it is actually.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing that Registrar General and the marriage registry are just within the same precincts in Accra.
Yeah.
You understand that? So
Yeah.
that shows you the legality of what the whole thing is about. Okay, so it's recognized under law. So as much as is possible, the couple should sit down and do a written document. Even God says it in the book of Habakkuk. He says,
Write it down on the tablets that
he
it may be
write the
made
vision
plain.
down.
Yeah.
Write it on the tablets.
It's Habakkuk 2.
Right?
Yeah.
So that he that readeth might do what? Will
Run.
understand and will run with it. So if there is nothing written, between the couple, and they take life on an ad hoc arrangement, that's where the problems will come from.
Okay. Let's go into our last section.
Okay.
Which is, and since we've tried to focus a bit on men in this conversation, let's talk a bit about what men can do today in service of what they can do differently or today in service of building their marriages, sustaining their marriages, and having like the best kind of relationship.
Well, I would say what men can do is, number one, to provide leadership.
Okay.
When the demands of leadership rest on your shoulders, you would ordinarily understand that you are not just responsible for your life, you are responsible also for the life of your spouse, your children, not just your children. If you have some insight, you will also understand that your generations unborn, you have a responsibility towards them. As a man, you should be a generational thinker. Okay? That is, you don't live for today. When you don't live for today, that more or less influences, a lot of things you do.
Yeah.
And how, you apply yourself to the issues of life.
Okay.
So, basically, men should provide leadership. And again, in this leadership, men should be, it's in the place of the man to initiate the drawing up of the family plan. It's in the place of the man to draw up the family plan. That is, to initiate it, because the wife...
It's a collaborative effort.
It's a collaborative effort. All right? And like we said, it's not cast on iron.
Okay.
I mean, you should be able to know as a man, or how many children, when God blesses us with children, how many children would we have? Where would our children settle? What are the kind of things, some prospective plans. It does not mean that they must go that way.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
But if I put on the cape of a minister now, I will tell you that if you are deeply spiritual, you can get clear understanding from God of what will be and what will not be.
Okay.
Okay, but speaking plainly, please, men, we should provide leadership, because that is how the scripture enjoin us in 1 Peter chapter 3. You know, the woman is the weaker sex. So by all intents and purposes, you know, we must be protective of female folk.
Do men today know how to provide leadership?
Well, that's a difficult question to ask, because it's a difficult question
To answer.
to answer. Pardon me. Because
And this is just in your limited experience, right?
You know why I'm telling you this?
Yeah.
In as much as the world seems to be open, there is what you call an information highway, which has metamorphosed into a digital highway, and then everybody's all over there. You know, we're seeing each other, you know, on social media and all that. But I can tell you that communication has dropped rather than increased.
Oh, absolutely. I say this all the time. The things that have been created to drive more connection have actually separated people, like social media, right? Before on Sunday, we'll go visiting people.
Right.
So there's a lot more personal interaction
Yeah,
and
yeah,
connection. So I don't disagree with that, right?
Yeah.
The things that your mobile phone is meant to help you be more connected, but we're probably more disconnected than we've ever been.
Everybody is, you know, on something. So
Yeah.
in this, well, as we go progressively in this generation, people are more closed up now than they used to be.
Okay.
And I know that must be a shocking statement I'm making.
Not at all, because and I'll tell you why I think that. We've become more nuclear focused, even from a family perspective, right?
Okay.
So when I was growing up, there were several aunties and uncles who were always coming over. There were lots of, you know, grandparents, uncles, you know, family friends, and there was a lot more openness, right? In the neighborhood, everybody knew everybody's child, right?
Yeah.
Today, there are still communities like that. I can't say that there aren't, but more and more you find that you can live in a whole estate and you don't even know your neighbors.
You don't know your neighbor.
Right? You just see a car, you see the blue car.
We are westernizing.
Yes. You don't know who your neighbor is. A lot of people are now saying, oh, I focus on my nuclear family and, you know, cut off the extended family. So I can see when you say that we're a lot more closed off today than we were.
So what men of today are thinking, it's mostly driven by what they see on social media. And then, of course, you know that most of what is hyped is quite basal, to the extent that what we're having sometimes is an exposure or more or less, you know, an exposure of the ludicrous side of society, so to say. Those are the things that are catching the attention of people. And you know, what comes into people's consciousness immediately translates into their thinking patterns.
Okay.
You understand? So the whole thing right now is about, I don't know, some of these words sometimes they escape me. They are like, you know, a hype for not just wealth, but like in the terms which the young men use these days, like to blow, you know, I mean,
I get what you mean.
The slaying, you know, and all that. So you
clearly no longer have teenage children.
So the aspirations, to a very large extent, and please, I mean, pardon me, I don't want to.
I understand.
I don't want to annoy your viewers or be on the bad side of your viewers. To a very, very large extent, the aspirations are very basal. I mean, they are not built on concrete building blocks, so to say. The kind of things which you will look at and say, by virtue of hard work. So today, what do we have? We have university students using their school fees to bet
Or to buy cryptocurrency.
or to buy crypto. Let's cool down on that. For very obvious reasons.
But I don't want to cool down on that, because yesterday I was having a conversation, and one of the things that came up was the fact that there's a lot of science behind crypto trading and all of that, but it's also become an addictive behavior for a lot of people.
It's terrible. It's terrible. The betting, about last year or so, a university in this country, said close to, is it 80% of the male population had used their school fees to bet. And they almost were refusing them, writing their final exams. It was all over there in media. You understand? So now, what serious thoughts would come out of the minds of, such, kind of thinking?
Okay.
So, if you as a man, growing young man, you use your school fees to bet, who are you going to marry?
I'm being quiet over there. So coming back to the thinking of what does leadership look like for a man?
Yeah.
So, because I'm curious to say that, do we know how to lead? And it's very easy to ascribe a lot of the things that are happening and the changes that are happening to a man's inability to lead, or a man's ability to lead, whichever direction it goes, right? But are we raising our sons in a way that they know how to lead? They know how to take charge.
Yeah.
They know how to take the responsibility.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that we've talked so much about educating women and the girl child, and we've over-indexed sometimes on how we are strengthening women.
Yeah.
Are we strengthening women in their capacity, in their capability, in how they are built to the detriment of guys or of men? It's just a thought, right? Because right now, there are a lot of women who do a lot of things, and so are not even able to, if you are leading me, I must see that you have direction.
Right.
There is no way I'll allow a directionless man to lead me.
Yeah.
Right? So how can we begin to help men
Great.
lead?
The first place men learn leadership is from
Home.
their fathers, and by extension, their grandfathers, if they had, that opportunity. Okay? So, but beyond learning leadership from the home, of course, also added to that, the mothers contribute a great deal in, propping the sons to understand what leading in a home will be like, or should be like. And then going beyond that, of course, we have our educational system. There is a lot which ordinarily our teachers should also be able to inculcate in a male child to a very large extent. Teachers are, as much as they are, tutors, they are also supposed to be mentors, to students. So, to a very large extent, the male child would also have a lot to learn, from the teachers in school. Then going beyond that, of course, here's the spiritual one. If they belong to any spiritual inclination, whoever or whatever officers or whoever is leading, if it's a pastor, or church workers and the rest of them, they also have a responsibility, to mentor, the male folk to, become responsible in their thoughts, in their actions, and in all they do. Yeah. And then there's an aspect of it which, a lot of people frown out today, but I will tell you sincerely, it's one of the things that ensured that we had well-grounded male personalities in the past, and that's our traditional system. Okay? You will not sit with the elders
And do foolishness.
And do foolishness. You see, that's why as much as is possible, we should, endeavor to expose our, our sons, the young male folk, to the wisdom of the elders. And when I say the wisdom of the elders, please, I'm not talking about anything fetish.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, there are ways, and proper approaches to life, which, of course, our traditional societies are known for.
Oh, yeah.
So you hear them tell you that, please, don't leave this place and disgrace us.
Mm-hmm.
You have a family name, okay? You are from so and so family. They will tell you the genealogy. You understand?
Yeah.
You get into certain homes, and you hear the mothers will call their children not just by their names and their father's names, but you start hearing the genealogy of, you are the grandchild of this, you are the great-granddaughter of this, you are the great-grandson of this. You see, ascribing those positive attributes of, the family tradition, which they should stick to. So those are the things that engender, the desire to lead. Then, of course, finally, we should be able to expose our sons to summer camps, where they go, summer leadership camps, where they go and learn, the nitty-gritty of how some of these things work. It's sad that these days we don't have ethics anymore in school. Previously,
was a key thing.
It was a key thing.
Okay. Final closing remarks?
Well, I think when it comes to the issue of marriage across board, what I will just say to everyone aspiring to marriage is that marriage is a very great and blessed experience, which every one of us needs to become well-grounded in life, and never mind some of the negatives, some of the disturbing, information we might get sometimes. It does not mean that we should lose faith on the institution of marriage, because
Absolutely.
I can tell you, if God had not instituted marriage, I doubt if human race will have gone beyond maybe 5 or 4 generations, but with marriage, life is propagated. With marriage, culture is propagated. With marriage, communities and societies and nations, are propagated. And through marriage, great many ideals are built, to, bringing us to where, our children should be. And I believe that some of us subscribe to some of the big names around the world today. It's always a wonderful thing when you see some of them, you see them with their mothers or with their fathers, just still encouraging them even though they're already in their prime. So basically, that is what it is. But as a man leading a marriage, please get a plan, draw up a strategic plan with your spouse, and subscribe to joint visions and missions and values and goals, objectives, and draw out activities. They are all prospective plans. None of them is cast on iron. But hopefully, when you and your spouse ascribe to those plans, you will discover that you will have little room for distractions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll make you a quick. Is there anything you don't drink? Well, or is there any fruit or any drink that you're not allowed to have?
My sister, give me any fruit.
Any fruit juice. That's fine. I got you.
Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
But you're required to tell me one thing in the drink when you taste it and see if you can figure out what's in it.
I can tell you by the color.
What's in it? Oh, but this one is easy.
I know this thing. What is the name now?
No, flavor. Not flavor. What flavor do you taste?
know it.
On that note,
I'm coming. Wait, I know it.
you won't be the first person who's stumped, so that's okay.
I know this flavor.
Cheers.
I know it.
Thank you. Stir it up.